Welcome to this Connect M3 Thought Byte podcast recorded on the 26th of February 25. I'm David Charles and my Thought Byte today is titled, Do You See Through People? And the tagline for this piece is, We have reached a time when our senses should be on full alert. It's one of those funny things in life which we give little attention to at the time. But it's also one of those things, one of those powerful things, which can help us so very much. Call it a sixth sense. I'm not referring here to a sense which became the subject of the film The Sixth Sense, starring Bruce Willis, but rather the sense which I believe we all have, but don't always understand, and even less act upon. But like many things in life, once you see it, once you focus on it, the more it will grow. As you will guess, I'm talking about seeing through people. There is a sense, I believe, we all have, which tells us something instantly about a person we meet and interact with. I'm not referring to the physical attraction we might have for another person. In such circumstances, something is triggered inside which causes us to notice them. That other, now noticed person doesn't have to say a word for an attraction to work, as we all know. Instead, I'm referring to an attraction of another kind, a more mental attraction. Something is sparked inside us which triggers a connection of some sort and often leads to a more positive interaction which unfolds over time. That time might relate to a particular reason. It might relate to a season in time. Sometimes it can relate to a whole lifetime, a life partner perhaps. I'm talking about an unexplained rapport one has with another person. The rapport is often instant and leaves you wondering afterwards, what on earth happened there? It can take you by surprise and can leave you puzzled. On later reflection, you will have wondered why you gave more away in a conversation than you would normally with anyone in similar scenarios. You will, though, have felt totally comfortable in doing so, and behind that there would have been, most probably, a good reason. The connection will have meant something and was important at some level. Such are these positive connections which we all will have had at one time or another. Then there are the unpositive connections in life. Sometimes when we meet a particular person, they only have to say a few words to us before we gain a negative reaction. Sometimes that reaction isn't attributed to the words they use, how they actually sound, or their shared opinion about something if they even get that far. There will have been something you cannot put your finger on, that gave you the feeling of negativity. You feel unwarm towards them and thus steer away from them. It's a totally inexplicable reaction, but one which you will have noticed and will have acted upon normally. Some people, however, choose not to accept the sixth sense message they get and carrying on with that other person in some way, only later to regret having done so. Have you ever had the feeling that you shouldn't have engaged with a certain person? You probably said to yourself, I had a gut feeling about that. Why didn't I act upon it and leave things where they were? I'd say we've all experienced that, and more than once, but at some point, a bit later, we wake up to that sixth sense we have and apply it to good effect thereafter. That negative reaction can also be recognized at a much earlier point. One can gain a negative reaction even without having a personal interaction. Sometimes we can get a reaction such as this just by seeing someone in a room setting. For example, have you ever had a negative reaction about someone you have just seen for the first time in a room full of people? There is no reason whatsoever for the reaction you have, but you have it anyway. Equally, in such a room full of people you haven't met before, you might have had a totally positive reaction to one person in particular. You don't know why, but for all the people in the room, you could have spoken to, you felt drawn to the one. And the conversation that followed was, in its way, meaningful and possibly productive or rewarding. We are thus guided by this sixth sense of ours, which itself might come from within us or possibly even from outside ourselves, guided by our own personal guide in life. A lovely thought, which is not without credibility. I find it most interesting indeed, the reactions I get to many people I just see through a monitor screen. These people, perhaps not unstrangely, are in the main politicians and others with a similar high profile in the media. Examining the situation as I have at length, I'm given to wonder if my own sixth sense is picking up something through what could be a universal kind of matrix of connections. Some will postulate and even reason that such a matrix actually exists and does so between all living entities. Whether such a matrix exists or doesn't, I have come to the conclusion that I have a sixth sense that recognizes when someone is not being authentic. In other words, I recognize when a person in question is not telling the truth. They are lying. Oddly, it becomes as clear to me as if they had a label on their forehead saying, "I'm a liar," and the liar is totally unaware of the signal they give. Once I get such a feeling about a person, often a politician, not surprisingly, it is almost impossible to shift. In fact, the reverse is true. The more I see of them, the more I hear from them, the more entrenched the feeling I get. I'd suggest I am in no way unique by having these feelings. My guess is every person will have had some form of this negative, if not enlightening feeling about another person. Most probably a politician, I'd say, since politicians have a reputation for telling mistruths. Perhaps they are at an immediate disadvantage when it comes to our feelings about them. Can I prompt you to ask your sixth sense about these people we see in our monitor screens, asking yourself, what message am I feeling about this person I see? What feelings do I get when I listen to them? I will have to warn you of this, however. The feelings you get might be a mix of sixth sense feelings and a natural ability to interpret a body language message. The two quite different input of sources for the two messages you may get are, though, likely to be the same. In fact, I would suggest they rarely conflict, if ever. Here I'm reminded of a statement analyst called Peter Hyatt. He gives quite a fascinating insight into the statements provided by crime suspects, including in the case of a young girl who disappeared whilst on holiday in Portugal. It's one of the world's most high-profile of cases. His analysis centres on words used, storytelling, and more. What he identifies and points out as telltale signs in people's statements, each of us might also be aware of, but only at a subconscious level. I have noted below a few examples of strong body language indicators from one of the world's notable personalities. The body language is most interesting indeed. Examination of his transcripts, or written statements, are very revealing too, if you study them. But then, what this gentleman tends to say in the audio recordings of him, which I believe gives him away all too clearly, to be quite honest, tells us all what we need to understand. No sixth sense needed with him, I would say. But another personality, if I could call him that, has no interesting body language that warrants commenting about, somewhat regretfully. But oddly, I just seem to see through him as if he has a transparent outer skin. He's a senior politician who I have difficulty in believing, a sense very strongly, a definite lack of authenticity that I mentioned earlier. I wonder how many others have the same reaction about him as I do, among many others in the same field of occupation. Anyway, So that's my current thinking and opinion on this subject today, but I wonder, what are your thoughts? Even more important and interesting again, I wonder what your feelings might be. A PS to this thought bite. As an aside, I gave mention to a statement analyst, Peter Hyatt, in respect of a child disappearance in Portugal, which happened in 2007. The child was Madeleine McCann. This story is so fascinating, and because I have given mention of it, I cannot pass by and not mention further intriguing facts relative to this case. Firstly, for anyone interested in further details relative to the McCann case, do see the video referenced E under further reading in the PDF version of this thought bite. It corroborates what Peter Hyatt suspected happened, that Madeleine died in the apartment and was not abducted, as we all have been told. Secondly, Peter Hyatt was interviewed by Richard D. Hall, an investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker. His work on a number of subjects is truly thought-provoking. A link to his work can be found, referenced F, also under further reading, in the PDF version of this thought bite. Thank you for listening to this thought bite today. I hope it's given you further things to think about on this interesting of subjects. For further information on this and related subjects, do check out the PDF version, as I mentioned, and the article reference here is TB-5095B. It contains a number of links to supporting articles, plus links to many other enlightening and fascinating articles on a variety of topics. Meanwhile, I look forward to sharing my next thought bite with you very soon. Goodbye.